Be me. Mormon. Start deep diving into Mormon's history/theology. Have a crisis of faith because it doesn't match up with the very Christian views I'd been taught growing up. Have a seminary teacher that's just an aggressive strange man. Massive weirdo, but he's honestly one of my favorite people of all time. I'm telling him about the weird shit I've been learning, hoping he'd disapprove, but he's actually delighted. Tells me that he feels the normal seminary classes sanitize the church too much. Compares it to dating, saying that nobody unloads all their baggage on the first date, which is good, but that if you never show that person who and what you really are, you'll never get the chance to be truly loved. Thinks that the church robs us of the chance to love God by not showing us who He really is. I'm still freaked out, but he seems almost sad at the last part. Says he'll give us a lesson on it tomorrow. The official curriculum can wait. Honestly, kinda touching. It's not often that you ask a question and a teacher stops what he's doing to focus on you specifically. Get to class the next day and he starts up a story without any heads up to the class. Says that his little sister got married when she was very young, then started going to the hospital a lot. She said she was just clumsy, and he believed her, because he's dumb and takes everyone at face value. Turns out her husband is beating her. She has enough of it one day and leaves him. In a surprising move for the era, both families wound up supporting her. Her in-laws disowned their son and mourned him as if he died. People start rebuilding their lives, but he's really mad. He was always protective of his little sister, and he'd been really close to the brother-in-law, so the betrayal factor stung. He was still a seminary teacher then, so he taught the lessons, but he said that God wouldn't give him his blessing to such an angry man, and stayed away from his lessons. After having one lesson fall particularly flat, he went home and said a prayer. Most of this is abbreviated. The prayer verbatim, as he told it to us, was, "God, I know that I must forgive all me, but I hate this man so much. I wish he'd choke to death on his own shit. Grant me the strength to let go." There's no miraculous anger dispersal thing, but he mends up enough to go to therapy, and after almost a year of visits, he feels at peace with himself. Almost a decade and a half goes by. Gets a call from the ex-husband's in-laws. Apparently, ex-husband had been vomiting a lot and admitted to the hospital. He'd gone unconscious and they weren't sure what was up, but they were calling family in cause he died. They asked him as a man of God to come and give their disowned son a blessing. Said that he'd been pretty sure he forgave the man earlier, but that this tested it. He really didn't want to give the blessing, but he took a breath and agreed. Got to the man just before surgery, gave him a blessing of peace, love, and forgiveness, and then the doctors took him to the table. Apparently the man had gotten some kind of benign tumor in his colon. It hadn't metastasized yet, or anything, but it got him big enough to block a whole thing up. And if it can't go down, it must go up. Men had been literally vomiting his shit up for days. During the surgery, he vomits, and some of it drains back into his lungs. They get it out before he drowns, but the combination of acid plus shit gave him a lung infection, and he later drowned in his own fluids. Class is totally baffled about this, and slightly horrified. Swearing is super taboo in Mormon world. Teacher continues with tears in his eyes. And on that day, I felt the true love of God. He'd heard that prayer all those years ago, deep down. But he couldn't fulfill when I was angry enough to be overjoyed with it, because to wish death upon a man in anger is a grave sin, and to relish his death is even graver. But once I had forgotten that man, once his death could be fulfilled without it being damnation to my soul, God gave it unto me, my wish. And I want you kids to know that this, the God that we worship here in this building, he's not the Catholic God of ineffable perfection. He is alien and strange, and more than a little terrifying, but he is still our God, and we are blessed to love him. Wound up leaving the church because of its ideology. Lacked any metaphysical strength. It's basically Gnosticism, where you choose to worship the Archon. But that moment stuck with me. Part of me still wonders if he got lucky, if he accidentally cursed the man, or if the strange, physical God of the Mormons, saw one of his most truly devoted followers and gave him a boon. You can ask me about the weirdness of Mormon theology if you're curious. They're a weird bunch.
Hey X, I'm new to this board and consider myself a hopeful skeptic. I would love to believe in the paranormal, but I have not seen enough convincing evidence to believe it wholesale. That being said, I have had one experience in my life that, while may be able to be explained rationally, is full of bizarre and unsettling things that I do not have explanations for. I don't normally triple code, but I figured I would for the purposes of telling this story. I suck at green texting, so sorry, you can't be me. But anyway, here's my tell about a place called Dead Man's Maze. I grew up in Arizona, and during my junior year of high school, I heard a rumor from my older brother's friend about this really strange and creepy place him and some guys stumbled upon. What I got out of him was that it was called Dead Man's Maze, or simply The Maze. It was a large fenced property that held within a large maze filled to the brim with weird shit and small houses in the center. Apparently people have seen ghosts or other paranormal shit there. The backstory that gave me was the old guy who lived in the house started constructing this maze for the granddaughter. She unexpectedly died, and out of grief he just continued to add to the maze for her. Apparently she was even buried on the property. They also mentioned that he may or may not have been in some kind of cult, and that the maze might have also had some significance to that, but naturally I thought my older brother and his friend were just fucking with me. And to this day, I think some of the details they gave me were added in to do that. But they were reluctant to give me more details and really try to scare me out of finding it. At the time I thought it was a tactic just to keep it a secret and kept pushing for the exact spot, and eventually they relented. But they told me I really shouldn't go, as from what they knew, the guy who lived on the property was fucking nuts and would probably attack me or even kill me if he caught me. I told my group of friends as soon as I get the chance. There was 7 of us in the group, including me. I won't post the names, but let's call them red, blue, green, orange, brown, and purple. Red was my buddy I knew all the way back from elementary school. He became kind of a jock, but we stayed good friends and still are. Blue, green, and orange were Red's jock's buddy and more of a friends of a friend. But they were cool dudes. Brown and purple were my 2 closest friends and still are. All in all, we were a weird mix of jocks, skaters, and nerds. Well, we all had a lot of fun doing stupid shit, so naturally this maze business was right up our alley, and we all decided we absolutely have to fucking go. Late one Saturday night, we meet up and get into Red's truck to find the maze. We drive around the part of Phoenix my bro and his friend told me it was in, looking for a church across the street from a school near a small mountain called Lookout Mountain. Eventually we find the neighborhood, but as per my bro and his friend's directions, we need to park the truck near a small green belt and walk out of the neighborhood on a small dirt road that leads to the base of the mountain. Once we found the green belt, we see where the street just randomly fucking ends to the west and a small dirt road starts. It's seriously strange, like a fully developed neighborhood just abruptly ends and becomes desert. As we start walking up the dirt trail and continue on, we slowly start to see the outline of a small fence and realize we're getting close, so we try to go stealth mode as we approach the property. When we get to an opening in the fence, the first fucking thing I see is a replica of the Sphinx. It was probably about 12 to 15 feet tall, and all the eyes were painted in a really unsettling way, so I'm already creeped out, and we haven't even stepped in yet. I quietly point it out and we all kind of nervously giggle and whisper stupid jokes about the power of Ra and shit, but we all slowly creep through the fence opening into the maze proper. Holy shit, this place was bizarre. Shortly past the Sphinx was a goddamn fucking replica of the fucking Stonehenge, albeit with smaller rocks but still large enough to walk through. We were all slowly walking around just soaking in the oddities, but so far nothing really scary happened. But man, did that change real fucking quick. As we moved past Minihenge, I noticed bird cages hanging on a few poles sort of randomly placed around the sides of the trail. At first it looked empty, but as we got closer to one, I realized that was not the case. We found a decomposed, nearly skeletal bird corpse in the first one, and other small bones in the others. This immediately killed the sort of creepy funhouse vibe we had up to this point. Purple whispered that whoever leaves dead birds out like that clearly has issues, and that maybe we should just turn around, but the jock trio peer pressured him and the rest into continuing forward. Eventually we came in a bend of the trail. and got a good view of the property. Calling this place a maze wasn't entirely accurate. It was more of a trail that slowly spiraled to the center where a small house was. As we kept going on the trail, we came up to the series of small shacks, some of which had windows, and in one of those windows I see a pale white face staring back at me, just about to shit myself before I realize it appears to be a doll's face. So my pants shitting gets downgraded to a light pissing of the pants. Again, I point this out to the group and we all kinda nervously laugh and try to get closer look to confirm it isn't going to steal our souls or whatever. We are starting to get close to the house and notice on the other side it looks like a floodlight is on the outside. At this point, we should have just gotten the fuck out of there, but being a group of teenage boys, we are too fucking dumb to realize that and slowly creep around the side. That was the moment where things went from creepy and unsettling to absolutely life or death terrifying. The floodlight was aimed down near a shovel. Next to the shovel was a freshly dug hole that was the perfect size for a body. In other words, it looked like whoever was there was digging a fucking grave. We all sort of froze when I noticed movement back behind the corner of the house. I nudged Red and a nod in the direction and we see a figure standing behind the floodlight outside of its glow, so we cannot make out any features. We all kind of freeze as it kind of feels like a standoff, but before we could process our situation, the floodlight shuts off and out of instinct, we all scatter. This is when I immediately regret bringing the jocks, as red, blue, green, and orange take off full speed and are out of sight. Brown, purple, and I book it back out to the trail to get to the road and toward Red's truck. When we passed the shack again, the face in the window was fucking gone and the door was fucking open. The three of us are now shouting, "What the fuck? What the fuck?" And we can hear shuffling from behind us, so we all bank into the dirt and bushes to just run straight to the fence and jump it to get back to the dirt road. As we get back onto the street, a fucking van screeches up out of nowhere and stops in between us and the truck. And I shit you not, a group of people in white robes start jumping out from the back of the van and start silently running towards us. The outfits almost looked like the KKK, but without the pointy hoods, and there was at least 5 or 6 of them. At this point, I'm beginning to realize I might fucking die tonight, and apparently so did Brown and Purple because they took off leaving me stranded. I fucking bolt as fast as I can into the neighborhood across the road and start running down the sidewalk. I was not athletic in the slightest, so even with fear and adrenaline, my endurance was starting to fail me, and I start slowing down. That's when I hear tires screeching behind me towards the entrance of this neighborhood. I look around for a place to hide as there's no way I'm outrunning the fucking van, and eventually decide to dive behind a bush in a front yard. I curl up into a ball and try to lay totally still, as I can make out headlights slowly coming up near the yard. I'm in and my breathing stops, as I can't tell if they see me or not. The van fucking stopped for a second and I start tearing up as I think this is fucking it and I'm dead. But then the van slowly drives and past and turns onto the end of the street. Once the headlights are gone, I start gasping for air, try to calm myself and get up to start kind of slowly power walking back to the sidewalk to get out of the neighborhood. I make it close to the exit back out of the main street when I hear tires squeal again and behind see the van turn back into the street towards me. I run as fast as I possibly can back towards the green belt, but as I approach, I see that Red's truck is fucking gone. I just sort of stop and freeze as the reality of the situation washes over me. The van is moments from seeing me in the middle of the street and there's no way I can hide in time. I really might fucking die now. I think as my mind races to find some way out of this, then I see the beams of headlights behind me. I turn around and see Red trucks barreling down and he slams the brakes to the side of me. And before I have time to react, Blue and Green hop out of the truck and grab me and toss me like a rag doll into the back before jumping back in. I come back to my senses as I see the van peel around the corner and start chasing us as Red fucking floors it out of there. The van chases us through the neighborhood, but once we get to the main road, it's fucking gone. Red slows down a bit and we eventually end up at a Walmart parking lot and he stops and shuts the truck off. We all get out and start laughing nervously, trying to make jokes of the situation. It was obvious we were all scared shitless and just trying to play it off like we weren't, but I think the laughing came from the relief that we all got out of there safely. To this day, I don't know what it was we stumbled upon or who was in the van chasing us. Over the years, we all stayed in touch, and whenever the maze came up, we all just reminisced about how crazy it was. But recently, when I came back to the Phoenix area, I decided to drive by during the day, but now the property is just a large empty dirt lot. Sorry I didn't turn into a skinwalker Wendigo Topa SCP, and I'm probably not the best storyteller, but this is the closest thing to a paranormal experience I have had, and I wanted to share it.
Hello, X. I want to tell you about how badgers saved my life in the woods. Be me, 3 years ago. Wild camping in Kent, southeast England. Middle of summer, hot AF. Bottle of wine, chorizo kebab over a small fire. Shit equals cash. Get in my hammock, no tarp, because despite what you might think, it can go weeks without raining here during summer. Because I went to bed half drunk, I forgot to tie my food bag in a tree. Watch big titty women doing ASMR on phone. Fall asleep. Wake up to sound of rustling. Grab my light, shine it over the bag. 2 huge badgers rooting through it, trying to steal my breakfast. Another 2 watching them. Tell them to fuck off. They ignore me. Go to get out of the hammock, and they nop away. Subsequent events make me feel bad about this. Wake up the next morning. Toast some brioche on the fire. Spread Nutella on it. Equals profit. Not much to forage that time of year. Go off in search of Set. Find entrance nearby. These guys were sleeping underneath me the whole time. Go to brook to fetch water. Strange smell. Kind of like rotten vegetables. Used to smelling dead animals. But this is weird. Similar, but not exactly the same. Get uneasy feeling. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a movement across the stream. Suddenly, feeling of fear, like impending doom rather than panic. Hurry back to camp with water. As I walk, the feeling passes. I reflect that it was totally irrational. Less than 2 miles to get out of the forest, to the main road. Totally safe. Area densely populated. I should be more concerned about a dog walker stumbling on me and reporting me to the landowner. Decide to work out, then watch a movie. Solar cell charging my phone battery the whole time. While away the day, until it's time for dinner. Evening comes. I'm getting hungry. Leave camp to fetch tinder for the night, before it gets dark. Have to hike up to where there are some birch trees. As soon as I leave the camp, I get the sinking feeling again. Try to put it in the back of my mind. Tell myself to stop being a little bitch. Go down into the valley and then up the other side. I know birch trees are near the top of the ridge, but I can't find them. Almost get turned around, even though it's still plenty light out. Feeling of fear steadily gets worse. On the verge of panic. Keep seeing / hearing things. Little noises. Flashes of movement. Smell that smell again. Rotting cabbage. Blocked drain. Literally stumble into a birch tree. Peel some loose bark and get the hell out of there. Run back down into the valley. By now, the sun has dipped below the brow of the hill. Tree line is dark. See figure inside. Instantly know it's not a person. Too tall. Too hunched over. Shit myself. Frozen in place. No idea what to do. Praying that it's just some guy on stilts or something. I decide to draw my knife and scream at it. It advances towards me. I just catch a glimpse of it in more detail. All I really see is its teeth. Lots of teeth. I turn and sprint down towards the brook. I can hear thumping footsteps behind me. Not a young man anymore. Getting tired. Turn my head and it's striding after me. Big, dark, hunched over, small horns, teeth. Look down. It's a badger. There's a fucking badger running beside me. We get to the brook. Run alongside for a bit until the badger jumps in. Water comes up to his belly and he splashes along. Not knowing what else to do, I follow. He jumps up the bank. I leap up. Hear a thing crash into the water behind me. I can hear it breathing. Badger looks back for a split second, then runs off even faster. I try my hardest to follow. Running uphill, lungs and legs burning. Terror, the only thing driving me on. Realize, this guy is leading me back to camp. See 3 huge badgers in the path ahead. They step aside and let me and Badger Bro past, but stay facing down the path. I run on a little further to my fire and hammock. Turn back to see other badgers running towards where I came from. Hear loud AF screeching roar, with thrashing and banging. Obviously a fight. I grab my knife and stick and charge into battle. This motherfucker is huge. Has 1 badger in 1 hand, obviously crushed to death, while others are going at it like little black and white whirlwinds, frenziedly tearing chunks of furry black flesh off the bastard. Must be 8 or 9 badgers all over this thing, fucking up its legs. I scream another battle cry and kick the cunt right in the guts. It hardly moves and lashes back at me. The thing towers over me, maybe 8 feet tall. The smell is overpowering. Ignoring the badgers momentarily, it swings at me with a large black hand. Once, twice, 3 times, while advancing, trying to take my fucking head off. I dodge back, swing my knife at it. By some miracle, I connect, and the knife practically severs its hand. It screams in pain. The noise is so loud, I honestly think I have hearing damage to this day. Hot blood sprays on me, super dark red, almost black. Sensing their chance, the badgers pounce. One actually jumps up its body and latches onto its throat. It turns, trying to shake them off. Screaming, I plunge my knife in its lower back, just under the ribcage. It screams out again. Somehow throws the badgers aside and runs off into the trees. Badgers and I retreat. I light a big fire. We sit there all night, keeping watch. We share all my food. I even let them lick Nutella straight out of the jar. It's a long, strange night. I get tired. Every time I pass out, one of them nudges me awake. Dawn comes up, and they slink away. I pack up and leave. Go to my car. Within half an hour, I'm sat in a Kostka, drinking coffee. Totally traumatized, in disbelief. Keep thinking it must have been a dream. Slowly convince myself that I imagined the whole thing. Just then, an 8 out of 10 cutie pie Punjabi barista comes up and, very embarrassed, asks me to leave because customers have complained about the smell. Oh, sorry. It must be the smoke from my campfire. She shakes her head. Very polite and caring, even to a stranger. Oh, pardon me for saying, but you don't smell of smoke. Wait, what? But I've been camping in the woods at the back of the village. She frowns, her huge brown eyes genuinely concerned. Smells more like rotten food to me. Listen, do you need help? Is there someone I can call? My face went. Apologized profusely and run out of there. Drove home in a daze. Unpacked gear Knife covered in blood. Never told anyone. What's the point? I still visit the Badgers set once a week and leave chorizo and a brioche. Never saw the monster again though.
I'm a small town police officer in Tennessee. In this job, you see some strange shit. This story might take a couple of posts. It takes place over some time, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. I'll try and condense what I can. About 2 years ago, get dispatched to a welfare check on an old timer that lives at the very edge of our jurisdiction. His neighbors, which live 3 miles away, haven't seen him in a while. Probably passed away, but I'll go check it out. It's around 9 p.m. when I arrive. Lawn looks cut, no mail accumulation. See what looks like a lamp or something on inside, so I know this fella probably isn't dead. Knock on door. Old dude, hunched over, maybe 5'7", answers. Explain his neighbors called because they are worried. I ain't dead quite yet, but I'm glad you're here. At this point, I groaned internally. Old people love to make a big deal out of little things, or just talk to you forever because they're socially starved. Oh, why's that? 'Cause I got all this coffee made and nobody to drink with. Keck. I couldn't help but smile at this dude because he had this good old boy accent and cheesy toothless grin. Fuck it. I'll kick the shit with this old timer for 5 minutes. We wind up drinking a cup of coffee on this porch together at night. Being a night shift officer, didn't really think anything of this until we were sitting there in the dark together, and it clicked that this old dude was A, awake pretty late for his age, and B, had coffee made and is drinking it this late. Sir, do you have a night job or something? No sir, I don't. You just don't intend to going on bed anytime soon? The next moment I remember vividly because it's downright cinematic. He took a long sip of his coffee, placed it on the wicker table on his porch, and looked at me. To tell you the truth, sir, I'm afraid to be here by myself at night. I don't want to go to bed. Why? Starts telling me about whenever he tries to sleep, he hears the leaves outside his home getting kicked around and scratching. Well, living out here, it could be a bear. No, sir, it is not. He said that with such conviction. I wanted to believe him. Well then, what is it? Then he goes on an old country boy soliloquy about how he's lived here all my life, and I know what noises animals make, but nothing really beyond that. Just tell him to keep his doors locked and call 911 when it happens again. He cracks a big grin and says, No, I don't bother y'all. If I called y'all every time it happened, you'd be here every night. We shoot the shit for another few minutes. Find out this dude was a Marine. His wife passed last year, just shit like that. Finish my cup, thank him, and bounce. Couple hours later, one of my fellow night shift officers get dispatched to this old guy's house. I decide to tag along because nothing else is happening and I'm curious. By the time I arrive, old guy and officer are chilling on the porch. What's up? Old guy cracks another big cheesy smile. Starts telling me he took me up on my offer of calling the cops because he heard noises outside. It is now probably like 12 or so. Me and the other officer walk around the perimeter of the house looking for anything. Don't see shit. Tell the old guy we don't see anything. How about some coffee? Again, this cheesy grin. Would 100% do it, but to be honest, we're not supposed to. With other officer there that I didn't know well, I decided to pass. As we're leaving and giving him directions to just call if he's scared and make sure his house is locked up, he follows us to our cars off his porch. Other officer leaves, almost like he wasn't interested in talking to the old dude. Crazy, I know. Old guy just keeps trying to keep the convo going. Not sure if because he was scared or just being typical old guy wanting to socialize. Eventually, finding out and leave. Next part takes a little place later. Don't remember how far apart. A little backstory is required. At the start of every police shift, we did a roll call. It's basically a meeting where you're told about shit that has happened around town by a supervisor. I mention this because our shift supervisor mentioned an old guy keeps calling at night for officers to check around his property. I, of course, knew immediately who he was talking about. Sure as shit, we get called again. Dispatch radios for any available units to volunteer to go to this old guy's house. They usually do this when they know a call is bullshit. They're basically asking us, who wants to take one for the team? I volunteered because A, free coffee, and B, I like this old country boy. When I arrive, again, it's around 9 p.m. Old guy standing on his porch, no light on. By this point, I knew his name. He told me to call him Red. Howdy, Red. Barely reacts at all, just raises his hand up, which keep in mind, he's only a shadow to me. I ask him if we could turn on the porch light while I'm walking up, and he doesn't move. Doesn't say shit. Stand there in awkward silence. Alright, come over here in my headlights then. As he walks into my lights, I see his skin is irritated as hell. It reminds me of how somebody's skin looks after they take a really hot shower. What happened to you, man? What do you mean? You're red. Look like you got burned or your skin is irritated. Well, I've been out in the woods. Why? Just on a walk. Why are you going out for walks when it's dark? And you said you're hearing strange things outside at night. This was earlier. Tell him I'll do the usual routine and poke around outside. What was weird is he always stayed on his porch, but this time he at first tried to follow me until I told him to stand back. I see nothing. I tell him I want to get him EMS. He refuses. Because he made no threats of self-harm, I can't force him. Last part. I will go into as much detail as I can for the first part. But I arrived later to the call. Maybe a week later after that weird interaction with Old Man Red, I start my shift. About an hour in, dispatch relays someone needs to relieve a mid-shift officer at an old guy's house who was taking a report. Fuck it. Why not? Arrive. Red is sitting on the wicker table on his porch. Officer standing on the stairs. Officer is a newer guy who had spent an hour on this call. Had no clue what to do. Apparently, Red's neighbors called a welfare check. They saw him fucking walking. They lived over 3 miles away, around their property, looking confused. Now that the officer's there, Red seems put together. No cause for alarm. As I'm walking up to talk to the other officer, a smell of coppery shit slaps me in the face. His skin still looks fucked up, his hair is unkempt, and overall, he just seems off like before. I tell the new officer we basically can't do anything and just go home and I'll pick it up from here. I just ask Red if he's good. Yeah. You aren't confused? No. Keeps giving me one-off answers. Hey Red, what is that smell? Don't know. Well, alrighty then, so I leave. I just didn't have anything there. About another week goes by, we get another welfare call. This time, the neighbors went to Red's home to invite him for some kind of function. Apparently they went to the same church. They hadn't seen him in a while, but we're seeing him walking around the woods and shit, so we're obviously concerned. When they get to his house, they said they smelled pure shit and expect him to be dead inside. So that is where I came in. Arrive, it is the smell I smelled before, only 10 times worse. Kick in door after knocking. Old man is dead right there in the living room at the bottom of the stairs. I know bodies. That man has been rotting longer than a few days. Neighbors say they saw Red yesterday, wandering around, tried to flag him down and he ignored them. What the heck happened to him? This sounds crazy. Cause of death? Officially, he died of natural causes. The question we all had, how did the neighbors see him around given the state of his body? I noted it in my report, and it was never paid any mind. Basically just, oh, they must have been mistaken. And as I said, Red was acting off when I saw him every time after the first night, given how he was wandering, not acting like himself, and giving one-off answers. I believe it was assumed he had undiagnosed dementia. I'm not familiar with the disease, so I suppose it is possible. I have been browsing X for a little bit. Now, I have theories that I'd never tell anybody in real life. The part that leaves me puzzled the most is the burned skin, unless he somehow accidentally harmed himself. I've thought about it a little bit. I've been a cop for years now. There are calls of dead old people all the time, so many I just forget about them. That call has stayed with me, and I've thought about it a lot. The dementia theory, which again is the official line, his skin could be explained by poison ivy/oak. Both are common here in the woods. Red is confused, wanders, and gets that shit all over him. Or really, just brushing through plants in general can do that to you. For me, the part I always wonder about are the neighbors. I spoke to them extensively, and they said there was no mistaking that they saw Red. They saw him on their property, wandering. His body's decomposition makes that impossible. When I told them that part, they looked stunned. The older woman especially, like her jaw was gonna hit the floor. They told me Red was a devout churchgoer, which is why they knew something was up when they saw him walking around but weren't finding him on church on Sunday. One last bit. Red had a daughter. I called her to let her know about the passing. I asked her if he was ever confused, and it was a resounding no. He had all sorts of old Marine buddies he kept in contact with as well. There was nothing there that pointed to dementia. Now, I'm not a doctor, obviously. My grandfather told this story to my mother, and she told it to me when I was 7 or so. Sorry if I'm missing details, but this is the best I can do. This was back in the 60s, 70s in rural Romania. Be my grandfather. Mid to late 20s. Late evening, very dark out. Only nights are from homes on the side of the roads or street lamps. Pass by a bar, typically frequented by locals in the village. Seemingly early 20s, just sitting alone by outdoor tables of the bar. He says they look genuinely stunning. Mind you, this is 9 to 10 p.m. we're talking about, if not later, in 60s rural Romania. One of them makes her way over to him and asks, "Hey, am I pretty?" About to respond, he notices something is wrong with her face. Her face is terribly disfigured. She looks vaguely human, but the longer he looks at her, the more mistakes he finds. Eye socket not exactly being parallel to the other. Nose is too far up. It's almost as if something trying to imitate a human. He decides to shut his mouth and doesn't say anything to the girl. He keeps on walking home. Nothing else happened, but he swears this happened to him. He never saw those girls ever again, and he frequently visited that very same bar. To get the ball rolling, I'll share some OC, not mine. So I work a couple of jobs right now, and one of them is at a deli, where I work alongside a 50-year-old Chinese woman. Just me and her. She told me this story once during a late shift. Let's call her Rachel. 30 years ago, Hong Kong. Rachel works with her sister in a warehouse. Long, grueling hours. Her sister's husband, Daniel, has some white-collar job. He works long hours too. The three of them live together. Because of work, they rarely have an opportunity to spend time together. But one day, Rachel's home from work early. Her sister's still at the warehouse, and Daniel's supposed to be at the office. But as Rachel's doing dishes, she gets a spooky feeling and turns around, sees Daniel walking out of the kitchen. She never even heard him. He never said hi, which is uncharacteristic of him. She calls out to him. Daniel ignores her, turns a corner, and disappears from view. Rachel dries her hand and follows and sees Daniel's now far down the hallway. She calls again, and Daniel continues walking, turns and enters his bedroom. Whole time, Rachel only sees him from behind. Rachel is now annoyed, and she rushes into his room to ask him what the hell his problem is. But the room is empty. She searches, thinking he's messing with her, but there's no one there. She searches the rest of the house, but she's alone. Later, she tells her sister what she saw. Sister has seen it, too. They decide not to tell Daniel. Occasionally see the double disappearing into some room. Just ignore it. Rachel explained to me, in very broken English, that this sort of thing was considered bad luck to talk about. But it had happened so long ago, she didn't care anymore. I'm glad you wrote this down, because it reminded me that one of my friends had a pretty similar experience. Here's the story. Be my friend, in high school in Homer, Alaska in the 1980s, being kind of friends with this weird girl in class. She keeps talking about how her brother's double is so annoying. What.jpg? Ask her if she means his twin. Does he have a twin? She says no, she means his double. Proceeds to tell my friend about how she sees her brother in two places at once and also interacts with him. Like, she walks into the kitchen and her brother is there eating cereal. Then she walks to the living room through the only pathway and there's her brother watching TV. She says she can talk to both of them and they behave similarly, although the double only appears at her house. Only difference is that the double likes playing pranks. Apparently the double likes to hide in weird places like her closet or in the kitchen cabinets or under the couch and jump out and scare her. My friend is thoroughly what the fucking at this point. He also doesn't believe her at all and thinks it's complete bullshit because the girl is totally into spirits and Ouija and is almost talking about communing with the dead and third eye and other stuff that makes her theories suspect. Plus, she's told them a lot of other ghost stories at this point and they all sounded like total bullshit. But this one's different because she isn't scared and she doesn't frame it as a ghost story or even a cult. It's just part of her life. Flash forward like 20 years. Currently living in Washington. Travel back to Homer for some family event. I don't remember what he said. At the Anchorage airport, my friend runs into the girl's brother. They recognize each other from high school and catch up a bit, and he learns that the brother is also coming into town to visit, and that his sister will also be there. Say goodbye to each other after they collect baggage. And my friend makes a note to look up that girl he was friends with in high school, since she'll actually be in town. Get to Homer after a several-hour drive. The next day, he goes to her house to say hi. Very small town. He remembers where her folks lived. They catch up since they haven't really talked since high school. My friend casually mentions that he saw her brother at the airport and asked if he was busy and when he'd be coming back. The girl looks at him, all confused. Huh? Explains that her brother is coming to visit, but that he won't be here for another 3 days because it was hard finding a flight from Colorado and back. What.jpg? My friend suddenly remembers all the shit this girl told him about her brother's double back in high school, shitsbricks.png. After that, I think they talked about it for a bit, and the girl said she hadn't seen the double since high school, and had kind of forgotten about it, but seemed to take it in stride, and find it funny, and said something like, "Glad to hear he's still kicking up around here." Nothing else happened regarding that, but kind of a lot like your story.
I have some creepy stories involving spending my summers at my grandparents' lake house in North Carolina if anyone's interested. Summer of 2007, be 14-year-old. 7-hour car trip from New Jersey to North Carolina with older sister, 16-year-old. Tired and groggy as shit from the ride. Great-grandparents, yada yada. Decide to take a brisk walk in the forest to stretch legs. Nice cool breeze, sun was setting, and surprisingly, there was a lack of mosquitoes. Known fact, I'm allergic to bug bites, so you could imagine the sweet relief. About half a mile, I began to hear branches breaking around me. Would occasionally stop and look around for the sauce, but of course the sounds just happened to cease every time I did. Seen enough horror movies to know where that shit was going. Decided it was best to bolt the fuck out of there. Began sprinting back to the lake house, out of shape, out of breath, didn't get very far. Hear the branches snapping again. Tired sprinting again, but the branch snapping got louder and louder with each step. Felt a presence directly behind me. Turn around, fight or flight, ready for the worst. Eased up, it was a fucking kid maybe half my size. Bright blonde hair, blue eyes, and a gray hoodie. Hi. Hi. Have you been following me? One of me. What? Haha. He laughs, running off. Freaked out, sort of moonwalked my way back. Snapping eventually returned though. Finally made it back, asked Grandpa about the kids playing in the forest. Gave me this dumb look. Anon, you remember that we're 15 miles from the city, right? Tell him about the kid. Seemed kind of troubled. Said a kid with the same description watches him from the shore when he goes out to his boat, and he swears he sees him running around the house late at night. Went on to say he's had his fair share of strange experiences and tells me to keep this from my sister and my grandmother. Says grandma calls him a loony bin when he tells her. Long story short, I spent that summer trying to relive his own experience he shared with me, excluding some he refused and threatened me not to do. 2 or so days pass after the incident with the boy. Grandpa goes on to tell me that there used to be a plantation right across from the lake that got torn down. Says that you can hear talking and singing late at night if you get close enough to the field. Curious but still spooked from a few days back. I kind of lay it off for a week until he volunteered to go with me. Night falls, we take a small rowboat to cross. Says we should be careful of lake mist since it was getting noticeably a bit misty when we left. Tells me to keep an ear out wailing while we're rowing across. Didn't know what he meant by that until we were too far in to turn back. He pointed out into the water and there was the sound of a woman literally wailing. Made a hush gesture with his hands and we just kept paddling until we reached the shore. Mist became noticeably more dense out. We walked for about a mile. Grandpa stops, put his hands on my chest. Anon, listen. Kind of squinted my eyes for some reason to concentrate. Hear faint whispers of voices. Feints would randomly spike up for seconds at a time. Words that I could make out that stood above the rest were, baby, look, please, and faster. Eventually died down. We decided just to walk back to the house precautiously due to the fog worsening. Make sure to take the side of the lake opposite from the wailing. He manages to distract me long enough to reach us back by telling a story of how he fell down a well back here when he was trapped here for nearly half a day and would catch glimpses of shadows looking down at him while he panicked. Was eventually found by his own grandfather who heard his screams. We get inside for a bit to eat. Grandma and sis all happy that we're okay. Grandpa and I sit outside. He asked me what I heard. Tell him the words from above. He began cracking up. He makes a joke about the ghost getting freaky. Reminds me to keep it hush, and we retrieve the boat in the morning. Nothing super exciting, I guess, but just broke up with a girlfriend of 2 years, fucking devastated. Brother calls me up, he knows. Says let's go camping like we used to with his new girlfriend. I'm actually kind of excited. Love my baby bro, can't wait to see who he's dating. We meet up at his house, meet the girl, like a 7.5 out of 10. Not my type, but I can appreciate her I guess. Brother is super stoked. Drive up to the mountains, Rocky Mountains, enter National Forest, and start setting up a tent just an hour from the road because we like the grills this shit. Decide to go fishing in stream because my license hadn't expired yet. They dumped a shit ton of trout upstream. Fishing made me feel a bit better. Let brother know. Says he's staying behind to teach his girl some camp stuff, like how to hide food and start a fire. Haha. Alright, camp stuff, I gotcha. Hike up about 5 minutes from camp. Suddenly get a feeling you get when someone is watching you. Turn around. Nothing. Fucking weird. Keep going. About 5 minutes later, feel it again. This time ignore it, keep marching. Lake's like a minute away from the trail up ahead. Hear a twig snap. Realize that I may be in the sight of an animal like a cougar or a bear. Fuck, can't be prey, keep marching. Take a peek back. There's my footprints in the damp dirt, easy to see. There's also barefoot footprints overlapping them. I could not have fucking missed that. Is there someone following me? Stop for a minute. Look ahead of me. See nothing in the dirt. Rain washed it clean. I watch the ground carefully, taking note of each step as I start walking again. I abruptly stop and turn, looking at the footprints. Fucking more bare feet following me. Run off into the woods. Follow them with eyes. They end where a bush is still shaking. Fuck fishing, I'm outta here. Start the power walk the way back. Pull out phone and call brother. Sup Anon, you head back up to go fishing? What the fuck do you mean back? I'm just turning back now. Well, you were yelling at us a few minutes ago to come up and help, but I was busy. Haha. Girlfriend's name heard you stomp around camp and then sprint back up. I've been busy on the trail the whole time. Are you serious or messing with me? Fair point, I was a prankster in high school and did it to him growing up quite a bit, but only funny stuff. I am decidedly not laughing. Have you or girlfriend's name walked around barefoot? No. Check the fucking ground. Phone goes quiet. I hear him say something to his girl. He unzips the tent and I hear him rustling as he peeks out. Anon, what the fuck is going on? Get the Colt right fucking now. I'll be there in a minute. Hold tight. Suddenly hear me calling for my brother over the phone. It sounds just like me. Anon? I'm not yelling, I swear. I'm still here on the fucking phone. I keep blabbering shit to prove I'm not yelling. Sure enough, I'm still talking when the other me shouts for my brother to come up and help. I hear him shuffle and his girlfriend ask a question, which looking back was probably, what the fuck? I hear a sound that sounds like a soft slide. Probably the Colt 1911 we got from our folks. Shared it between houses for extra protection. I keep running, still on the phone. Fucking signal is weak, but I'll take what I can get. Find a campsite. Don't see anyone. Fucking bare feet footprints everywhere. Brother leans out of tent, phone in one hand, gun in the other. Points it at me. Don't blame him, I would too. Anon, what did you call me when we were 10 years old? Spazneck, you would twitch if I poked your neck. He nods and lowers the gun and phone. We pack up everything we can and start the trek back. We're like halfway there according to GPS when I start to feel like we're being watched. Turn around, look down. Bare feet footprints. Fuck. We speed this shit up. His girlfriend is crying, he's shaking, I'm trying to remain sane. Down the trail we hear some shouting again. Bro, where are you? Need some help. Haha, caught some fish. Brother looks right at me. I'm pointing to my shut mouth the entire time. Bro, where are you? I panic and shout back. Fuck off! Goes quiet for a minute. We keep marching. Fuck waiting for a climax. Shouting starts again. This time, I sound worried. Bro, where are you? There's something out here. Bro! We find the car in a dirt parking lot. We toss everything in it. I jump in and start the car. His girlfriend is crying. Brother is shivering like it's a dozen below. Car starts right the fuck up. It wants out of here too. Suddenly hear the shout again. Bro, where are you? I can't find you. That wasn't me. I'm still out here. Don't leave me. I look back and eye my brother. I'm right fucking here. I swear on our dead dog Sky's grave. He nods and just whispers, drive. I start the car up and we take off, ripping down the road. Girlfriend screams, brother tries to calm her down. I look in the mirror, don't see shit past our camping crap. What the fuck? You were back there, Anon. You were standing in the road. I'm probably crying now too. Do I have shoes on? I don't fucking know, just drive. We booked it all the way back to Estes Park, rented a motel room, and took turns staying up and watching. I didn't see shit back there, just footprints and the look of terror on my brother's face when he heard me shouting. We talk about it now and his girlfriend is convinced that it was a mockingbird or something. As for the me on the road, she said she was just seeing things. My brother and I don't think so. We don't go camping anymore.
Be working as security guard. Armed. Taser. Baton. The works. Have to make my bones in the company by doing overnight patrol route. Catch the route no one ever wants. Includes one haunted apartment building, abandoned shopping center, and a fun little drive through a privately owned canyon in the foothills. Being the FNG, nobody warns me about any of the stuff. Just post orders, car, and a get a move on. Get to apartment building, grab keys to turn off elevator, and lock laundry room, etc. Place is known locally for suicides, murders, and it's really old. On ground floor, lock up laundry room. At the end of a creepy hallway, no other doors. Look down the hall, real quick and turn back. Hello? Holy hell, where did you come from? Olive-skinned girl, about 18, 20. Long dark hair. Wearing what I can only describe as a long gray pillowcase. With hold for head and arms cut. Barefoot. Smiles. So beautiful and also sad. Recover my composure and grin with a good officer friendly. Good evening, ma'am. Turn my head and shake the doorknob for the laundry room. And as I turn back to exchange further pleasantries, gone. Only door from hallway is laundry room I just locked. Only way out is past me, down a 30 to 40 foot hallway, and knock out into the building foyer. What to myself a second, then note back down the hall. Make it over to foyer and call elevator ride to top before turning it off and locking it. Client's rules, not mine. Clunker even had one of those old-timey accordion gates inside. Turn to start walking down the hallway to stairwell. Door at far end of hallway is open. Not wide open, just enough to see inside. Remember client note to lock door if ever found open. Grumble, grumble. Born in a barn. Stick my head in doorway to make sure room is empty before closing. Room is bare. Hardwood floor. Faded wallpaper. Single small window lets moonlight in. Take a step into the room, cause I feel like someone is in there. Take another step in and grab out flashlight. Literally a small studio with a single window, nothing else. What the effing all over, cause I never feel like this. Look up at the ceiling and see crossbeam of building cutting across the room. As I stare up at it, suddenly, tightening feeling on my throat, wave of overwhelming despair crushes my chest. Feel like a rope is constricting my airway. Room suddenly rushes into an icy cold. Stumble backwards, catch my heel on the doorframe, and land up my ass in the hallway. Door, which I had open wide to look into the room, slams shut, locks click. Spiral down all 5 flights of stairs, and out onto the street before I know it. Turn to look up at building. Dark-haired girl from laundry hallway is looking down on me with a smile from top floor room, backlit by a lamp. Turns away from window, light goes out. Took me an hour and a half, a pack of cigarettes to marshal myself into driving again. Talked to my friend in the company afterwards and he apologized. Said he would have warned me if he knew that I got that route. All the old timers know not to check that room. Said if it does get found open, there was a stick with a hook in it in the closet down the hall to pull the door closed. No one ever tries to lock it. Fuck me. On that note, a few weeks later, had to do patrol through privately owned canyon. Got warned by work bro about this one. Firearm required patrol unit. Doesn't make sense. Road through canyon comes off suburban street. Canyon entry blocked to public by chain link fence and massive steel gate. Literally 20 foot tall, 40 foot wide, 3-inch thick steel gate. Around the office is referred to as Jurassic Park account. Client demands armed guard patrol, up to dead end in road and back down. Issue cited being known of prowlers, suspicious noises, and transients. No shit. Briefing papers literally had transients in quotes. Should have known then. So, FNG, me, goes to account, opens chain link, and drives in. Shuts chain link. Muscle open Jurassic Park gate. Start driving up into canyon. Mind you, it's 1 a.m. Pitch black. Driving 5 miles per hour with car lit up like I'm signaling to space. Cliffs on one side, rock face on the other. Opens the area with scrub woods on one side. Start a moment before realizing shape up ahead is a deer. Tunnel. Like the tunnel everyone uses in Bunnyman creepypasta. Drive into tunnel. Handgun in lap at this point. Fuck. Drive out and think I hear scuffle from round the bend and road ahead. Twig snapping. Leaves rustling. Along road next to car. Turn spotlight towards weird shadow that pops out a moment. Oh my holy sweet fucking shit. I'm praying as hard as I can to whatever fluffy and merciful deity will listen. Please be dear. 404, file not found. The rictus visage of a humanoid. Gray skin, beady eyes, no clothing, skeletal almost. Head snaps up and shields its eye from spotlight before yanking broken deer carcass behind tree. Open door, gun pointed, screaming for it to come out. Silence. Fuck. Get back in car, drive down to Jurassic Park gate and call partner. Partner calls boss. Boss calls me, an idiot, and calls client. Client demands my number from boss and calls me, has me explain. Gets really excited and tells me to lock Jurassic Park gate and fuck off expeditiously. Whatever you say. Client put phone down, but doesn't hang up right away. Hear yelling that the guard company found it near the tunnel. Click. At the end of the month, client closed the contract and paid out remaining fees and breach penalties like it was nothing. I ended up signing NDA and getting a 500 bonus and called an idiot by boss again. Went driving with work buddy to find Jurassic Park gate again about 6 months ago. My face went, pulled up, and gate is gone. Chain link is gone. Road is open. Cuts all the way from one road up through tunnel and down into another neighborhood. God fucking damn it, that job sucked. Okay, doozy story. Driving patrol route about 2 to 3 months after Jurassic Park account incident. Get call from work buddy. Says he's working another route that night and got a call from boss that alarm is going off at abandoned strip mall we service. Fuck it, patrol driving sucks, I'm rolling. Get there just after buddy. Let's call him Tiny, completely for irony's sake. Tiny waits for me to hop out of car and unlocks the gate. Fucking place must have had space theme or something when they designed it. All white facade, curved at angles. 2-story plaza with stairs, elevator, walkway. Anyway, we go around, pull a couple doors. Nothing looking broken. Suddenly, my phone rings. Gives us both a start. It's the boss. Literally yells, "What the fuck did you do?" as soon as I pick up. Pulled on doors, boss honest. He goes into tirade about client calling him about saying fire alarm is on. Break-in alarm triggered from all sensors. An elevator entrapment alarm is going off on a setup at home. Site is dead quiet. Work buddy gets on the phone and tells boss to get off my back. Nothing going on. Client system must be fucked. Hands me back phone, and boss says he doesn't give a fuck. If anything is broken, I'm fired. Hangs up on me. I start taking pictures as work buddy opens security/breaker closet. Elevator at the end of the hallway dings and opens. Pitch black inside elevator car. Both shine lights into car. Doesn't break the dark. Can't even see back of car. Tiny draws gun. Walks towards elevator with it hanging down by its leg. I say his name, real slow, with a question mark at the end as I draw to. Just as he's about to step into a black void where elevator car should be. Cell phone rings again, and he snaps out whatever the fuck pool fake state he was in. Literally jumps 3 feet into the air as he yells, "Nya!" in shock. Retreats away from elevator, pointing gun. Elevator door slams shut and elevator dings. Displays showing it's ascending into basement. Tiny looks pissed and says, "That thing tried to eat me." Waits for me to follow and runs downstairs to basement. Elevator is waiting, doors closed. Hits open button and steps back, gun leveled. Doors ding, open, and black, gaping maw that sucks up our flashlights. I'm in a nope factor 10 and shaking like a leaf. Tiny pulls a chem light stick out of his thigh pouch. Don't ask. Dude carried a knife, lighter, chem lights, tourniquet, first aid kit, and extra magazine in his rig he had on his thigh. Total Maw Ninja, until he produced exactly what you needed every time. Cracks it, gives it a shake, and underhands it. No thud from it hitting back wall. Nothing. Light just disappears. Elevator dings and door shut again. Tiny races over and slaps the button to call it open again. Then, takes his stance again. Ding. Doors roll open. Fluorescent lit, dark wood paneling, handrails, white tile floor. Elevator car greets us. I excel. What in the fuck? Tiny puts his gun away and scratches his head. He's beyond his depth as we peek our heads inside. I look up and spot a small camera in the corner and suggest looking at the tapes. Might want to clarify one point. When the lights came back in the elevator car, the cam light was not there. We never found it after. Mosey our way back up to level 2 and take a look at CCTV displays. This is where it gets even weirder. Shows up walking around until elevator doors open. Feed from inside elevator cuts to static just before doors open. Comes back on later, probably when they opened again, with everything back to normal. Camera pointed down the hallway just shows me facing towards the elevator with security room door open behind me. Camera pointed at elevator area, doors open on blackness, but angle is tight enough that you can't see Tiny. No camera pointed at elevator in basement. Tiny suggests I back up footage further. Nothing at all. Camera inside elevator cuts out here. And here, but nothing else. Suddenly remember phone call that saved Tiny's ass. Check cell phone. Missed call from boss, who, when called back, calls me an idiot. We lock up and Tiny goes to make a report to client via email. Elevator dings and door open on inky blackness. Holy fucking nope. Run back to cars, take off. Tiny files report that alarms triggered by coyote that I got in through fence. Client buys the story. Every time there's an alarm after that, we yank the gates, pull the doors, and then hightail it. Long as the fucking place didn't burn down, we didn't care. Client demoed the tape the same year and built shitty apartments on the site. Seriously though, fuck that job.
This was a story my uncle would always tell me as a kid during summer vacations to entertain us children. The following was treated as the unadulterated truth by the entire family, especially my uncle, who was generally discouraged by the family from telling anyone. I can't possibly do justice to how my uncle would tell it, but here goes. The uncle, 12 years old, growing up in shitty suburban town in northern Ontario. For privacy reasons, I won't say the name. Growing up there meant complete boredom for any young person involved. The most you could do was play baseball or fish in one of the local rivers. Kids who didn't start underage drinking or narcotics at a young age were drawn to the woods as a form of entertainment. The town was spread out but not heavily populated. Just meant there were a bunch of empty houses and empty lots. Uncle has a best friend called T and a younger sister called S. Obviously not gonna use real names. These kids would fuck around constantly in the woods, blocking up rivers and making shitty forts that would collapse within months. Uncle had a fascination with mapping out the whole place, constantly plotting new ones whenever something new was discovered. Section of the town that was not so populated was affectionately and historically referred to as Weston. Thus began the stories of the Weston Manimal, an urban legend in this shitty suburban town that went way back. It went by other names, but my uncle's generation called it after that TV show Manimal that was so popular at the time. One neighbor owned the DVDs of the first season he ordered from the States, would have TV parties with the show. In the western section of the town, dogs would show up dead and trash was rummaged through on an almost weekly basis. That, combined with the legend of a wild man or animal person in the town, made kids go crazy with their adventuring trying to find it. Senile old people in the town would tell them stories of seeing a pale humanoid figure in the woods. Uncle and friends wouldn't always believe them, but sometimes they would take what they say to heart. Parents were advised to educate their kids of the dangers in the woods, not because of the legend of the manimal, but because there were some genuinely dangerous bears and coyotes in the woods that could fuck a kid up. Kids playing this off as protecting us from the manimal. Imagination and fear in the kids got so bad that some teachers had to sit all the kids down and tell them that the manimal was a stupid old legend the town made up generations ago. This just made my uncle and his friend T want to prove it even more. One day, a kid from their class says their dog went missing and is asking everyone if they saw it. Uncle thinks that the western manimal must have gotten it. Decide to check their maps to see which places in the woods they haven't gone before. One big old hilly area in the middle that they generally stay away from, about 1 kilometer wide. One reason they hadn't gone there yet was because one of the rivers that flows around the town wraps around it and gets too wide and deep to wade across easily. The other side of the area was thick brush that no one made a path through. Also, couldn't get through it easily. Decide the time is now. If the western manimal isn't there, then it doesn't exist. Being 12 years old and stupid, they decided to begin their expedition to find the manimal, including sandwiches, a carton of milk, and 4 cans of Pepsi. No flashlights because they were stupid kids, but bring binoculars to search for it. T decides to include his sister S, who was a couple years younger than them. The 3 begin construction on a shitty boat made of cheap wood and glue. Ended up being more of a raft that just looked like a boat. At least, that's how my uncle described it. This is what they'd use to cross the river, since it would take too long to cross the other way through the thick brush. They grabbed 2 paddles and put on their stupid red and blue ball caps to begin their epic journey. They leave just before dusk one day without telling their parents, because you could do anything as a child back then. They start walking, carrying their dogshit boat raft, and struggle all the way through the woods, past their forts that saw many a night in battle, past the old gravel pit where they'd lit gasoline on fire for fun. Eventually make it to the river, probably 40 feet to cross at this section. Whip out their paddles and start paddling. All 3 pile into the hole. Way too much weight. The fucking boat starts leaking as soon as they paddle. Being stubborn stupid kids, they think it will make it there and back. By the time they get to the other side, the boat's completely sunk and they're all wet, still have some daylight left, and decide they'll just head back through the thick brush afterwards, despite the time it would take. T tells his sister to check out the other side of the area, while the 2 of them look up around the hills. The 2 march up the dry gravel hills to a miniature cliff face on the other side. They're looking down for any signs but can't make anything out. Patiently stay quiet and wait for S to come back. Eventually, they hear something down the cliff side of the hill. They both look and see something moving down there near a hole. In another small hill, something's moving by stream of flowing water. Uncle puts his binoculars up to his eyes. When telling the story, Uncle always chokes up at this part. Looks down at small greenish-gray humanoid, completely naked. Roughly the same size as my uncle, about 5 feet. Incredibly skinny. Arms that were too long for its body. It had nasty matted black hair on its head. At least 1 foot long, wavy and scruffy, obscuring its face. It had cuts and bruises all over its dirty naked body. It almost looked emaciated. It was dragging something behind it with its incredibly long fingers, and even longer overgrown nails. A cut open golden retriever, definitely the missing dog that belonged to my uncle's classmates. It stopped for a while as T and my uncle were dead silent. Then it looked up at them. My uncle was still staring at the thing through his binoculars. With what little sunlight was left, he could make out its face. He always described it in the exact same way. Its head was way too round and big for its body, almost spherical, with an underdeveloped forehead, super skinny neck, with what appeared to be a giant Adam's apple. The long scruffy hair on its head was stained with blood and dirt. It rolled down its face and obscured some of it. Its eyes were bulbous, black, and sticking out too far. A mouth that was way too wide to be normal, going from one side of the head to the other. Its skin on its face was darker and really tight, almost stretched. It didn't have a fucking nose. It didn't have any fucking eyebrows. It didn't have any fucking ears. My uncle has no idea how long he looked at the thing. Eventually, it calmly walked off towards its hole in the ground. T was shaken and trying to get my uncle to talk. T didn't get as good of a look on the thing, but he did see its shape. Uncle was borderline unresponsive. T shoved them down the hill. They made a fuck ton of noise, but needed to find S as soon as possible and fuck off back home. The sun is done going down at this point and it starts to get dark. They start running towards the other side of the area where they sent S. T is starting to panic because they can't find her. Uncle starts to become more responsive as they try to look for her. They don't want to make noise in case they attract that thing. T starts whisper shouting, calling out his sister's name. My uncle stops them from making a noise. They can hear the thing from the hole start walking towards them in the brush. They know it's not S because of the noises it's making. They sprint back the way they came, around the opposite side of the area, closer to the thick brush. They hide in some bushes for a bit, once they're on the other side to catch their breath. S isn't calling out to them, but if she was lost in the woods, she would be making noise. This makes T scared as hell for his sister. A weaker way through the brush was closer to where they saw the thing dragging the dog. They devise a plan to get home as quickly as possible and tell their parents so they could come to the woods with guns and find her. They wait a few more minutes as it gets darker and darker. The two start running from the brush but hear a noise. Both freeze, duck behind a fallen tree. The thing from before comes out into a clearing. Can't see my uncle or T. It's dragging something else, a much smaller dog. Looked round but couldn't make it out since it was almost completely dark. The little dog is bound with some sort of rope or crude vines. It's squealing, barking up a storm. The thing starts to torture the little dog, cutting it with its nails in a certain spot, pinning its head down. All the while, this thing bobbed its head up and down and made a raspy laughing-like sound. Could barely make out that it was smiling. It started skinning this dog alive and tearing at its meat. Eventually, the dog stops moving as the thing begins to eat it. The two slowly begin inching away, trying to make it as little noise as possible. As they're walking away, my uncle looks behind them. The thing is standing straight up, looking directly at them. Uncle panics and screams and starts pushing T to run. The thing begins to chase them. All my uncle can do is run. He gets split up from T. After a few minutes of running, he was still in the area and didn't make it through the thick brush, only ran along the edge of the area. He can hear T screaming off in the distance, with some other inhuman sounds that he couldn't place. Uncle tries to run to find S while the thing is distracted. Runs to right where they sent S when they showed up. Not a trace. Eventually, he finds her backpack, slightly ripped on one side. He gets worried. He begins to look further in the direction of the backpack. Runs past some trees. T screaming is starting to get louder. Uncle sees something small and long underneath a branch. It's a fucking arm. It's S's fucking arm, wrenched right off her body. Next to it was a shard of her shirt. Uncle freaks out. Begins running blindly. Trees and bushes start cutting at his face and legs. He keeps tripping and stumbling in the pitch black woods. After running for what seems like hours, he finds a dirt road he recognizes. He begins sprinting alongside it in the direction of home. He hears more screaming, but isn't sure if it's real or just his imagination. Running and bleeding at the same time is exhausting him. He eventually makes it to the town hall and goes the usual route from there to his house. Uncle runs into his porch at full speed and collapses while trying to open the door. Around this point, there's a gap in my uncle's memory. He can't visualize any of this, but it's what his parents and my grandparents told him. From my grandparents' perspective, he had been out playing for much longer than he should have. Once the sun went down, they called all of their neighbors to see if they knew where he was. Eventually, they called the police and asked for an officer to come to their house to help find my uncle. When they were talking to the officer about what they should do, my uncle ran into the porch, then ran into the door. He was bleeding heavily from the cuts on his legs and one on his arm. He was completely unresponsive and delirious, presumably from running and the adrenaline overdose. He was unresponsive and borderline comatose for the next several days. Grandparents thought he hit his head, but local doctors said it was more likely symptomatic of a traumatic experience. My uncle stayed in his bedroom until he started talking. This is when my uncle starts remembering things. T and S never came home that night. Their parents weren't the worrying type and didn't report it till the next day. My uncle was unresponsive during the search period, so no one got any information out of him on what happened to T and S. By the time my uncle was back to normal, some cops asked him what he was doing that night and what happened to T and S. At the time, my uncle was trying to convince himself it wasn't real. He also didn't want to get in trouble, since it was his idea to look for the Western Manimal. He kept his mouth shut. To this day, he says it was the biggest mistake of his life, but he was too traumatized to tell the truth. Kids in class began to spread rumors that the Manimal must have gotten to T and S, that it climbed into their rooms in the middle of the night and killed them. Teachers and adults told the kids to be respectful to T and S. A few weeks later, my father was born, and my grandparents wanted a better life for their two sons in a bigger city. They moved shortly after, and my uncle never heard from T or S's family ever again. He claimed that he suffered from serious stress after the incident, that he kept having flashbacks of guilt of what happened to his friends. My uncle still told us the story though, much to our older relatives' dismay. I think it was therapeutic for him to get out his feelings after the incident, rather than just repressing all of it. He left the gory bits out when we were younger, but as we got older, he told us more and more details of the story. He would avoid details of the dogs and the arm, but the way he described the thing was always the same. It was burned into my imagination as a kid, and would sometimes give me nightmares. Now that I'm older, I'm not afraid of the story. It's just one of the saddest and most disturbing family stories I've ever heard. I've never really believed in the paranormal or the supernatural, but every time my uncle tells this story and describes the disgusting sadistic black eyes of the thing, I believe him.
So, no, this one probably isn't all that spooky, and I could tell the paranormal bits in a few lines, but maybe you'll bear with me. This is an event that meant a lot to me, and I want to share it. Grow up in a small house in the suburbs. It's me, my baby sister, Katie, and my parents. I love spending time with my baby sister. She's 4 years younger than me, and basically a little sponge. So I spend a lot of time teaching her all about the shit I think is cool. She thinks I'm a superhero, basically. happyfamilyphoto.png. When I'm 12, Katie dies. I don't want to go into too much detail here, because it's a bad memory, but basically, it was a hit and run on our street. I take it badly. My school grades plummet. My interest in hanging out with friends goes out the window. I just can't fathom it. Why would God allow that to happen to a sweet little girl like Katie? Why would He allow it to happen to me? My faith in God dries up. By the time I was 16, I was a fedora-wearing atheist. Even bought a Richard Dawkins poster for my room. I know, cringe. Fast forward, I'm 20 years old. Drop out of college and move out of my parents' house. Get a job at a restaurant where I make decent tips and can afford to live alone in the city. Doing pretty good, but the bitterness never leaves me. Every year on the anniversary of her death, her smiling face pops up into my head. By that point, I had stopped visiting her grave. It was just too hard, but I always spent the day thinking about her. She was a brave kid, full of energy. My parents were happy to have me around to help look after her. She was a real handful. It was my job to keep her safe. It's my fault she died. Every year, I relive that same feeling. Fast forward a couple of years. I'm a trainer at the restaurant where I work. I get tasked with training a new guy named Walt. He's a young black kid from Mississippi, real thin, small, and soft-spoken. I think he's too shy to be a server here, but I train him as best as I can. But his first night was a total disaster, and after one weekend, management canned him. After I got off work, I find him sitting in his car, crying. Long story short, I invite him out for a burger, and we get to talking. He tells me all about his situation, how he's been living with his alcoholic mother and her dickhead boyfriend, how her boyfriend convinced his mom to kick Walt out, how he's been bouncing from job to job for almost a year, struggling to get by, eating maybe once a day at most. Shit, I could go on, but the point is that his story really tugs at my conscience. I don't feel right just going back to my own bullshit little life after that. I invite him to crash at my place until he gets on his feet, and after a lot of hesitation, he finally agrees. Fast forward again. It's about 3 months later, and Walt and I are best buds. We both like movies and good food. I discovered that Walt was a great cook. He even used to set up his ingredients in little bowls on the kitchen counter. mise en place, or whatever. He'd arrange the bowls in a circle. For good luck, he'd say. I convinced him to find a kitchen job, and he did. He's been working at a nearby barbecue place for a while, and is saving every cent, trying to find a place of his own. He finally finds something. I go with him to check it out. It's affordable, but kind of a lousy little place in a sketch neighborhood. But I've learned that Walt's a proud guy, and to him, it's better than leeching off me. He's set to move in next month. One night before his move, we're casually watching some movies that's on TV and shooting the shit. Walt brings up on how when he was a kid, he had an older brother who was murdered. This was back in Jackson, Mississippi, which, he said, was really segregated and still pretty racist. His brother was attacked one night by some white dudes and they killed him. His mom never got over it and started drinking heavily. Everything fell apart from there. Walt was 10 years old when this happened. He felt like he always had to look out for himself from then on out. His mom treated him like shit. Her boyfriends all treated him like shit. The other kids in his neighborhood weren't any better. They called him a pussy because he was smaller than everyone else. He used to get pummeled a lot. He pauses as he's telling me this, getting choked up. This is the first time in his life that he's felt like anyone gave a shit about him, he tells me, and he wants to thank me for everything. I tell him it's no big deal, and that it felt good to be able to help him. That night, I'm lying in bed, and it hits me. Walt's childhood and mine are total opposites. Walt felt like it was him against the world, that nobody would ever be there for him. I always felt like I let everyone down, that my job was to protect my sister, and I think about this as I go to sleep. The next day, Walt moves out. Just a couple of months later, Walt's life is looking up. He's managed to fix up his piece of shit car. He's dating some cute waitress who works over at the barbecue place, and his skills in the kitchen have not gone unnoticed. Pretty soon, I'll be in charge of that thing, he told me with a big smile on his face. I congratulate him. He was standing in my doorway, looking happier than I'd ever seen him. That was the last time I saw him. I found out the next day that Walt was killed. Hit and run. The words fucking echo in my head. I'm devastated. I supported Walt as much as I could, but there's a little voice in my head that wants to say, it's your fault. But it's not. There's nothing more than I could have done. I recognize for the first time, my sister's death wasn't my fault either. We were both kids. I couldn't have known any better. I didn't see the car coming. I didn't think she'd run into the street. I didn't know what would happen. Scenes of my little sister run through my head. This time, they don't hurt so bad. I said that was the last time I saw Walt, but that's not true. Again, trying to keep this brief here. Walt's funeral comes and goes. A pastor delivers the eulogy, and I think about God for the first time in a long while. It's not fair that life is so pointless, that Walt just has to rot in the dirt after suffering so much, that I have to lose people I care about. It's not fair. A week later, I have a dream. Walt's sitting under a large tree. I tell him I miss him, and he says, "Why? I'm right here." The next morning, I decide to visit Walt's grave and talk to him for a little while. I leave some items I think he'd like, put them all in a little bag, the size of your fist, and laid it right there on his grave. In the distance, I notice a large tree that looks like the one from my dream, and I walk over. Not sure what I was expecting. It's not like Walt's gonna pop out of nowhere and say hello. It's not like he can hear me. But I still say, I miss you, man. I instantly feel a strange peace and weird sensation. I can't explain it. Just felt like a really intense form of goosebumps, only pleasant. I walk back towards the cemetery gates. The strange, goosebumpy sensation hasn't gone away, and I look over at Walt's grave as I pass it. I stop. The bag of items is open, and everything spread out over the grave. They're all arranged in a circle. Mise en place. For good luck, I think. This is going to sound silly, but at that moment, a beam of sunlight suddenly streams down onto the grave. I remember Walt saying in my dream, I'm right here. And I can't explain it, but I can feel his presence. I'm kind of crying at this point. I tell Walt that I'm glad he's okay. I'm glad he's in a better place. I miss my friend. I miss my sister. But I'm starting to think that there's more to life than we think. You can call it coincidence. You can say it's all in my mind. You can say that life is brief, and when we die, we're gone forever. But I'm sorry, I just don't believe it.
I've got a collection of some fairly recent stories about this weird area where I live. Be me moved some while ago to this area in the outskirts of Sydney. Historically significant area. Quite rough but getting gentrified. Live up a hill from the thick of it. Hear gunshots from down the hill from time to time. But it's dead quiet in the section I myself live in. Emphasis on dead quiet. There are no less than 4 separate cemeteries on the path downhill to the station. Poor friend. So I have to walk this route to get to the station if I want to go anywhere. Weird shit happens nearly every time I walk this route at night. Amusingly, never anything criminal or life-threatening though. The only time kids have tried to rob me, they deem me too poor and scattered. A number of weird things have happened in this area, but for the time being, I'll focus on just the weird shit on the main road up the hill, the first of which. Late 2022, walking home after a night with the lads. In a terrible mood and can't really tell why. Pitch black night, kinda unusual for my area, not much light pollution, and sprinkling down a tiny bit of rain. Walk past the biggest cemetery, around the halfway point of my walk. As I approach a streetlight, fizzle and blink, it turns off. Not a huge deal as passing cars illuminate the path well enough. The next streetlight, fizzle and blink, again as I pass. Okay, what the fuck? And the first streetlight has turned back on. Third streetlight, fizzle and blink. Second streetlight, back on. Until the next block, this Mexican wave of streetlights dying keeps fucking happening, fouling my mood some more. Aside from the rain and my scowl, the next third of the journey is unremarkable. Get near the top, close to my house, see a black cat hanging around. Ain't no superstitious bitch, desperate for company, so knowing I'm good with animals generally speaking, I crouch down and beckon. Look at me with eyes wide open, bolt upright, fleas. Tell a friend. She tells me, you've become the avatar of death tonight. Ha ha ha, very funny. Skipping ahead to this week, driving down the hill with my mother, we noticed the streetlights have been upgraded with extra floodlights shining into the cemetery. Probably to catch the local goths fucking in there. Important part is that they work, right? Few days later, Valentine's Day. Have a really shitty day with my friends, in a sour mood again. It's spitting down rain again and it's past midnight. Get up to ye old cemetery again, and what do you fucking know? All those brand new streetlights went out again. This time, all at once. Whole crest of hill is blanketed in night. Pic related, a photo I took when it happened. Rumble internally. Send another friend a message about it. He jokes, are you about to get abducted? For comedic effect, I do not reply for a bit. Keep walking. Just at the edge of the death swath of streetlights, I see another cat. Orange this time, not the black one. And about 1.5 kilometers away from the previous cat. Sure, that doesn't seem too weird. Again, I'm in a bad mood and wanting some companionship. Approach the cat, mildly concerned about why it's wandering around someone's driveway in the rain in the dead of the night. Side note, can you imagine living across the road from a cemetery, let alone where the lights ominously die just like its inhabitants when you approach? Approach cat. In the low light, I hadn't realized from long range that it was weirdly lumpy. Get closer.
Cannot for the life of me tell me if it's looking at me, side on, or if it's just looking away from me. Think I can see its face staring at me. No, just its weird lumpy fur on the side of its head. The shadows it casts look kinda like a face. This is concerning as fuck, but whatever, I'm just being paranoid. Notice it's hobbling in a very ungainly manner. Looks almost injured, like the hip was shattered. One haunch was higher than the other. Weird ass cat. I'm now more concerned for the cat more than anything. If it's injured, wandering and caught in the rain, I want to help it. Cat does not seem to give a shit about me no matter how much I pss for it. Even clapping doesn't do so much as make it flinch. A bit disturbed that it hasn't noticed me yet despite how close I'm getting. Have stepped onto the property now. Oh shit, what the fuck? Think for a brief second I saw black gaping pits where its eyes should be. False alarm. It was just a poor lighting. It has eyes. Wait, what the shit? Its eyes are wide open, unblinking, emotionless. Eyes don't even so much as refocus when I cross its line of sight. It doesn't react to my existence at all. Watch as it hobbles face first into a wall with open eyes. Bounce off it, rinse and repeat. The body flinches. The eyes don't even blink when it happens. Not a sound from the cat's mouth. Have been watching this for a while. Trying to get in its way, catch its gaze, make enough noise to attract it. Anything to snap it out of this bizarre state. It seems to only faintly register something when I clap again. Maybe it's almost deaf, and maybe it's blind. Eyes don't look blind though, so I don't know. Anyway, it started walking towards me, so I take a chance, crouch down, and hope it doesn't attack me. It walks right into my leg, bounces off it again, once again, with the fucked up open eyes. Try to pat it. Body lacks heat, it's as hard as a rock, and as lumpy as it looks, meaning that's not matted fur causing the weird shapes. It reacts to my touch as if it were an obstacle or an attacker, not a hand. Split second later, it resets to abnormal. It didn't run for the hills like the other cat, just kept staggering, face first into another obstacle, like nothing happened. More than a bit alarmed by this, but even more alarmed by it trying to walk to the road. If it's deaf and blind, it won't stand a chance. Blocked its path, herd it into some guy's fenced yard, close it off. It continues to hobble around there, but seems to be familiar territory, has stopped to smell something. Looks like it's cheered up. Briefly speculate about if it'll survive the night in this state, given it's unseasonably cold, raining and without shelter, and already seems to lack body heat. Surmise that it's up to the cat now. At least I've stopped it from unfairly eating a car wheel, if it didn't already do so given the injuries. Stagger off into the night, suddenly feeling sick and drained, generally just horrified by this uncanny cat. How it seemed like a wayward soul or a corpse that hadn't realized it was dead. Not even completely sure I saw it smelling something in the yard really, it was too far away. I was just being hopeful. Dragged myself the rest of the way home without incident though. I still feel weak and like I could collapse from shock and revulsion at any stage, and nearly do several times up the rest of the hill. Tell yet another mate about it a few days later. He tells me he probably would have noped out and confided with his dad or brother about what happened. Certainly not spend nearly half an hour doing as I did. My own family still don't know I had this strange experience. They'd probably think I was crazy from the moment the brand new streetlights went out around me. And then, 2 days later, yesterday for me, walking up the same road after having to go to the city to talk about a project I'm working on. Broad daylight this time, so no streetlight shenanigans. Walk past the house with a cockatoo perched at the letterbox staring at me. Stop, turn to take a picture of the handsome lad standing so tall for me. Realize the roof is covered in pigeons, and they all took flight as soon as I started taking pictures. Pic related. Some real birdemic shit. Cockatoo doesn't move, so I keep getting these badass pictures. Feel like I'm about to get swooped, so I hold my ground so they can fly past. Weird enough, can't hear they're all landing behind me. Cockatoo is giving me a positively zonked stare. Still does not move despite all the birds flying past us. Fair enough, neither have I. Shoot some photos over my shoulder at the birds I can hear. Pic related. They've all landed behind me. Slowly turn around to face them. They all stare at me, bug-eyed and gobsmacked, and shuffle as a group around to my right, the same way I'm turning. Past 90 degrees of rotation, they all take to the air again, fly right back up to the roof, visibly looking over their avian shoulders at me as they flew by. Awe is returned to as it was. The cockatoo is still staring. No recourse left. I give an exaggerated shrug, throw back my head with a cackle, and I ask the cockatoo, now what was all that about? He just keeps looking at me and blinks. A fair response to a crazy guy who talks to animals. Utterly chuffed by this ridiculous event, and soon after the weird encounter with the cat. This was a short way up from the road there too. I saunter back home to tell everyone about it. Now for some briefer stories / anecdotes about this area. Probably a bit spookier, but generally a bit less weird. First moved in after some bratty old lady shipped off to a nursing home, vacating the house. The first thing I felt about this place was that it was weirdly hostile and oppressive, as if there were invisible faces hanging in the air around me, scowling hard. She left behind a gollywag. You've seen one before, look it up, which I gifted to my black best friend as a terrible joke. He thought it was hilarious too, kept lynching her around his house. His brother didn't see what was causing the doll to keep moving and wind up in such ominous positions, so he assumed she's possessed by the soul of some black lady who got lynched. He promptly shoves the gollywag in a shoebox and hides her under a bed, never to be seen again. House feels less hostile but still freaky after this. The place has lightened up a bit since we started introducing our own pot plants amongst the old lady's plants. While planting our stuff in the garden beds, find some old urns. Oh shit, wild. I thought it felt like something had died here. Still can't shake the feeling that that's not everything. Something really upsets me and unnerves me about the hatch to the subfloor. Subfloor area is damp and mold has grown on it like grass. If there are any skeletons or estranged husbands, I can't see them. Bedroom is right above the subfloor entrance. Boasts a number of holes into it that keeps letting critters in. Have woken up with dead cockroaches in my bed or to ants biting me. At one point I swear I hallucinated a ball of white light with a screaming face streaked past outside. One night, completely worked up about the howling wind, I feel a number of cold skeletal hands reaching up from below and gripping my chest as I was about to drift off. The only thing more prodigious than the pace at which dead birds, especially baby chicks, often still in their reeking, rotting eggs, appear in my yard is the rate at which they disappear without a trace. Every last one disappeared. One time, I saw the gigantic local raven eating a small bird on a distant rooftop. Maybe that's where they all went? No clue how it found some of those bodies though, cause I hid them and didn't see it land in the yard at all. One night a few months ago, was up late with a visiting friend. Had been talking for some time, so we step outside for fresh air. Fog had rolled in. The air was heavy, musty and humid. Smell of blood and rot filled the air. Like every grave was dug up. Both knelt out and returned indoors. Pristine, dry, cold air just a few minutes later. Friend confirms to me that neither of us were imagining things. We really did just smell what we smelled, and it really did just up and disappear together with the fog. Another friend likes to joke about how eerie and uncomfortable it is around here, remarking about how there's no sense of human life beyond me and my family. Says we're alone out here, and all the houses are just a front. Former friend tells me she's heard rumors of a cryptid in my area, though in her typical sarcastic fashion remarks that it was probably just some fucked up overgrown cat. Before we both bantered about if I or her might have been a real cryptid. Tried to spend a date out of cryptid hunting, but things fell apart numerous times before that could happen. Said former friend was a classmate of mine who I bumped into a train about 60 kilometers from uni, after having just seen a deer from a train window for the first time in my life. All my friends joked that she was a skinwalker because of this strange coincidence so far out, and since none of us had seen a deer in the area before, every now and then hear the strange distant whooshing / roaring around from a vortex in the sky. Has happened a couple times now, too big and low to be a plane. Barely any planes out here anyway, no main roads nearby, certainly not a car engine, and the only river is well out of earshot. Grandma has stayed over and remarked during the night about UFOs, and lo and behold, there have indeed been some fucking weird, asymmetrically lifted craft quietly zipping around the night sky at crazy speeds. Hordes of bats migrate across the sky every night, because of course they do, and finally, heaps of creatures migrate through the walls of this house at night. Have had rats, possums, have even seen large spiders the size of my hand, or different types of scuttling around in formation to hunt the plagues of cockroaches together. Even had frogs get into my room on Halloween, found cannibal snails. Continued for the last time. Also that there is a somewhat legendary local ghost story, slipped my mind till now. Have had no encounters with anything I'd call a ghost, but even in the modern era, people still claim to have seen Fisher's ghost, a story you can look up yourselves since I was never particularly interested by it. One of the 4 local cemeteries is marked as the Pioneer Cemetery and houses the remains of the so-called first farmer in colonial Australian history, and so on and so forth. I could keep updating this thread with every slightly conky thing I've ever seen around here, like the mildly terrifying sculpture of a grey-faced lady in a broad-brimmed hat ominously lit at night, or I could document the plants with seed pods that drip some mucus goop when it rains, or the fact that the main road in the town below is full of old geezers who watch you across the street, or indeed all the ancient, ghastly, decrepit old men who have tried to get me to acknowledge them at the train station. But clearly this is more than running its course. The fundamental point I gotta convey which I hope all these tales of weird events have succeeded in doing for me, is that this is one weird and fucked up place. Taken individually, some of these events are totally commonplace, or evidently the product of a paranoid mind with little company to check its perspectives against. Taken all together, however, it demonstrates what a profoundly fucking weird place this is to live in, and how uncanny, abnormal, and oftentimes plain horrifying shit has kinda become the norm around here. It could be scarier, it could be overt, it could be more dangerous, but all in all, it's a place that baffles me and unnerves me. I have more stories about even weirder events and places I've lived, but for the time being, I'm gonna leave it and call it a night. I hope you all enjoyed the read, and I hope the pictures, when relevant, have helped demonstrate